Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me for the third time, round 3, everybody, with Travis Gibb. And I got the name right, I think, for the second time correctly, because I know I messed up the first time that we did
Right,
this.
but you interviewed, was it Luke? Yeah, you interviewed Luke and you got it right. I was very proud of you. I was very proud.
I was very proud of myself, too, and I gave myself a cookie afterwards. And then I got yelled at by my mom for taking her cookie, but that's a different discussion. Anyhow, so, well, welcome back to the show because a lot's been going on with you. So, obviously, Cthulhu Invades Oz just came out. I know that's being shipped out. And so, if you didn't get it, there might or may not be an opportunity to get it with this Kickstarter that's currently going on. And obviously, we have, as I sort of tipped off my hat, we got the current Kickstarter going on, which is Broke Down and Four Dead Bodies, issue 4. It's wrapping up the arc, I guess, sort of, and we're going to dive into that a little bit, sort of the story too. And the reason why I'm being very vague with it is I'm going to let you sort of explain what's going on, where there might be sort of some stuff coming out with it. But obviously, let's catch everybody up on what is Broke Down and Four Dead Bodies and the basic story for those who don't know where all this is going.
Yeah, so Broke Down and Four Dead Bodies. It's a crime noir, kind of in the tone of Pulp Fiction, kind of like a movie Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Way of the Gun, The Gentleman, Django Unchained, all the good, classic '90s, 2000 raw and raunchy crime stuff. So we get two guys, they break down on the side of the road. They absolutely hate each other, but they have everybody after them, from the police to a Mexican drug cartel to a biker gang to straight up gangsters, all of them trying to kill him to try to get this mystery case or try to figure out why that happens. And kind of it's an unraveling mystery. We figure out where the case came from, what it's connected to as the issues go on. People have a lot of theories, and this kind of wraps it all up. This is the last issue. It's kind of the end of the opus of Broke Down and Four Dead Bodies.
Yeah, we're going to dive a little bit further into it because obviously we have two people, Randy and Denver, who Randy just got out of jail. And obviously he sort of knows Denver and they got some issues. And also Randy is white, Denver is black. So that's thrown into there too, where there's a little racial tension. One of them is calmer than the other. And so obviously we get that entire situation where we have a lot of dynamics that take place that go beyond just culture, as well as emotions, and as well as other things that have happened in the past. And so that, to me, is sort of what is some of it that this is tackling just beyond the story and adds a lot of flavor to it. And so that's something that I like about Broke Down, is that in particular, we do get this interaction between two people who come from two different backgrounds, and then they sort of liked each other and then they sort of hate each other at the same time. And there's decisions essentially lead to other decisions and other decisions. So what was that like, setting that dynamic up? Because it creates such an interesting juxtaposition for the entire story.
It's hard, without giving too much away. One of them is lying, right? One of them knows more than he's intending. In playing that and trying to play that is hard in a comic book, right? In a movie, you just cut away or you get a quick look. You can't really do that in a panel. It's really hard to do that. You can't just have them wink. So it's an interesting dynamic to set that up. And I liked the attitude of the two. One of them is on his way up. He's been working his way. You're kind of seeing his history, and you kind of see all the characters, all 4 of the main characters. You kind of see their history, and you get up. In fact, in issue 4 is the first time you actually see all the main characters when they actually used to work together, before they separated, that we've seen in 1, 2, and 3. So it's really a cool dynamic of playing them off of each other and building the tension and building these dramas. One of the greatest things about, let's say Reservoir Dogs is you had the cop and you had some of these guys that did jobs before, but some of them didn't. You didn't know who knew who. And even if you didn't do a job with them, you knew they said Mr. Belong's legit because he's loyal to the family. He did 2 years for me. He did this. All these other little things that play into it. And I really got to play with that. A lot of people who've read issue 4 have gone back and read the whole series and been like, oh, so you did this in issue 1. oh, you did this in issue 2 and you did issue 3. And some of it's very clear, and some of it's, you'll get it on the second and third read through. It's a very tight script, which is rare for someone who essentially is a rookie. I don't feel like I'm a rookie anymore, but when I started this, I definitely was playing all those parts together. And I think it pays off. Everyone who's read it so far has said the story kind of comes together and kind of pays off.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens. Obviously, I've read it for those who don't know, and I've read and I'm going to say it this way politely. So I read the unfinished version, meaning that it wasn't full colored and all that stuff. But I got the gist of it. And I think everybody who's read the unfinished version will agree with me on that position, where definitely you get the gist of it, you know where it's going, and you don't need the color. Honestly, if it was a complete black and white comic, I still think it would lose something, but it wouldn't lose too much, in my opinion.
And you're missing like 6 pages, in the book, but the story's there, the main story's there. There's just epilogues and things like that.
So to even go off of that too, because I do want to throw some other stuff in here before we get too far into it, and we're talking a little bit about issue 4, is that also some of the people that are coming after these two are just super fascinating. You talk about Reservoir Dogs, Django Unchained, obviously Quentin Tarantino is definitely an inspiration for this. I think that is a safe bet to take. Also, I think Carl Hassan, I don't know if you know who Carl Hassan is.
I do. Yeah. A little bit. I'm not as familiar with that stuff, but I definitely have seen enough to have it possibly influence without me realizing it. Yeah.
So for those who don't know, he did Razor Girl, and his entire position is absurdity. And this also falls under that realm too, and also falls under the idea of everything is tied neatly into a bow at the end. This isn't a tragic story for the most part, without giving too much away.
Yeah.
And so obviously, though, before we get into that, I do want to talk about Mr. Washington, because I love Mr. Washington. This is my favorite character out of the entire bunch, especially at the end of issue 4, and how he is a ruthless, I guess, mobster / gangster. Yeah. But he runs it like a legitimate business. And so it's very cool to see that, and how he runs his business tight, and he actually treats it as almost as if it's like any other business, except that his business is, dealing with drugs and money and hits and anything that a mob would be involved in. And so what was that like building that character? Because we get this very accurate and acute businessman, but he's not necessarily in the business of legitimacy and legitimate things. And I think it's such a cool thing. And then when he's going after people and he doesn't fuck around, and I love the entire concept with this, because I think that's something that is also really well done, going beyond Denver and Randy.
Yeah, I don't want to give too much away of Washington, but he makes a couple comments and does a couple of things in issue 4 that really kind of he kind of plays a little bit of double hands. He plays a lot of hands at the same time. He's always going to come up on top regardless of the outcome, and I like that about the character. What I like about Denver is he's old school. What I liked when I created him, Washington. He's all about acquiring these things, and it's someone once pointed at a review. They were just like, why the cases? Why this? Well, that's kind of his stick. He doesn't want to. He wants to own someone, and it can't be on a digital card. It can't be some blackmail. It needs to be physical, like it's a physical thing. And there is a reason of why that is. We didn't get into it in this arc, but if you get to see more stories with Washington, hopefully we'll be able to play that out in the area. And I'll give a little bit of it here. So Mr. Washington is actually related to the free slaves that were actually freed by George Washington. I actually have a full history of that. So owning, it's kind of a thing. He's kind of angry still of some of the slavery stuff, and that's why he needs to physically own stuff. And that's a big deal with the location that I chose of Canyon City. There's a lot of white supremacist rallies. There was a lot of white supremacist actions that we're still doing 100 years ago that were still very, very violent up to 50 years ago. If you do a lot of research of white supremacy and stuff, a lot of it is in that area of Denver, Colorado, of Denver, Canyon City, Colorado stuff. There's a lot of it still there of that. I'm kind of playing into that in the future. Really deep spoilers, just in case I never get there. Watch this interview and you'll know it. But So when he does stuff and the way he does stuff, the way he interacts, he's got all these groups, and he's playing and he's trying to make sure that all these things are running tight to his specifications. And if they don't run to his specifications, he's not afraid to jump in the limo and come down like he did in issue 3.
And to even go further off of that, because I don't want to give too much away on what happens, because I want people to obviously see it. I want people to actually understand the story, and I don't want to ruin too much on the foil / right hand / whatever you want to call it is Miguel. And I'm about to drop a bit of a spoiler here, but it sort of happened in issue 2 where Miguel is sort of behind setting up Randy and Denver and sort of instigating the chase to some degree in issue 2. And I don't think that's much of a spoiler per se, without giving too much away.
Yeah, that's in issue 1. Yeah, in issue 1 that you realize that, the minute he sees them, he's taking out guns. They don't even have a chance to explain themselves. You can read that right on the Kickstarter.
And so obviously there's Miguel, and Miguel is tied to Washington, and there's some other stuff going on. And so what was that like to develop Miguel? And obviously I have a feeling Miguel tends to be, more Hispanic, and he has somewhat of an association with a Hispanic gang to some degree. And so obviously that's something that's super interesting as well, because that adds a third dynamic into what's going on. Because obviously, it's no secret that everybody is chasing Randy in Denver, including Washington, Miguel, another gang. Obviously, we didn't talk about the Psycho 78s, which is reference to the Crazy 88s. It has to be. So obviously, but Miguel obviously has a touch into that. So what was that like building out Miguel, just to give people an idea?
Sure. So, when I split up the team, I had 4 different people, 4 different archetypes. We see 3 of them very dominant. So we have Denver. He is the carjacker. He jacks cars. That's his primary profession. We have Randy, who's the con man. You see a little bit of it in issue 2, and you see it. You definitely feel it when the whole thing plays out in issue 4. And then we got Miguel. Miguel's the assassin. But the difference between other assassins, he's like that cool assassin in movies, right? He just kills people. He doesn't give a shit. He's not like, I need to make sure it's all clean and nice. He doesn't care if it's dirty, because he just does his job. So he does that. And I think that, he's one of the guys who he's willing to get dirty, and he's got dirty so many times that he's ready to take a higher position in, the organization that Mr. Washington runs, which we give a name to in the series in a little throwaway line. But so he's trying to get that. So writing Miguel is really fun, because he's got people who are loyal to him, as he's doing things, and he's playing his own. He's kind of like a mini lord, a mini boss, and he's kind of trying to play all sides. Even throughout issue 4 and 3, he's still playing his side. He's not quick. He's quick to draw his weapon, but he really wants people to hurt. He wants people to know why he's after them. In the third archetype, in this issue, we had our first female character is Magnolia, who's a very important part of the story, which we didn't know. We've kind of heard her referenced, but, fair enough. And she's kind of that, voice of reason. She's the one who's kind of making sure everything's good. She's got a very cool head. She's very rational. She kind of knows what's going on, and she was kind of the people who held everyone together until something happens.
Yeah, and I don't want to dive too much into Magnolia.
Yeah, it's tough, right?
I'll throw out something really quickly that's going to ruin some stuff here, but obviously this should give everybody somewhat of an idea. Spoiler alert. Obviously that should give everybody a quick glimpse into it. Who wants to know what's sort of going on, and things that obviously in issue 4 we get a massive backstory of what's sort of happened. That should give you somewhat of an idea of what's going on with her, and I think everybody gets an idea, but I don't think they fully understand what exactly is going on, because it's about a girl. Obviously,
it's the whole story is about a girl. Like all good stories about a girl. Like if you writing 101 is, it's all about a girl. It's all about a love, passion. It's all about a girl or all about money. I make you think it was all about money, but it's all about a girl.
and I will say this: is that isn't the spoiler.
Right.
Clearly, that isn't the spoiler. So obviously, it's about her. I
Right.
think that's a pretty evident thing, and it's what's happened to her, what's going on with her, what's the entire situation with her, how is everybody involved, what
Right.
is going on, who knows what knows who, all that stuff. And so obviously there's a lot of stuff that's going on with this. And so what was it like really planning all this out? Because issues 1, 2, and 3, and I think in issue 1, it's safe to say you sort of are thrown into the situation. Issue 2, they're dealing with the situation. Issue 3, they're sort of getting to the end of how this situation is going to be resolved. And then for most of issue 4, you get that resolution, and then we get the backstory of why issues 1, 2, and 3 matter.
Right. Yeah.
It's a safe way to put it.
It's there's tons of movies like this. I can't even think of one off the top of my head where you think you're watching one movie, and then all of a sudden you get to the end and you're like, oh, I'm watching a different movie. And you're kind of adjusting to it, and that was intentional, right? I wanted to tell you a story. I wanted to get you involved in the world, show you the players. And then I wanted to say, why the players? Why is this plot important? What is it about? And the name of the story is Broke Down. For Dead Bodies is kind of the subline. If I ever do a sequel, it would be Broke Down, and Tapped Out or other sequels would be Broke Down. Broke Down is a story. And you think it's about a car because a car breaks down, but it's really about the state of mind. These are broke down people. They have been beaten up. They have tragic backstories, and they're trying to get over them. And they're trying to deal with that. And that's what this is about. This story is, a tragic story trying to get through that. And it's really, really hard to get it right, and then give everyone the resolution with enough answers, but enough stuff in there to allow me to play in the future, right? If I give everything, there's not a lot of room to play. But I think I give enough answers, I give people the resolution with the case. I give, there's a couple of twists in there that you never saw coming that you're like, oh, that if you go back and like I said, go back in issue 2, issue 1, there's the first line in issue 1 is it ties into issue 4. It's very, very well played out. But that's the way I tell stories. When I write stories, I map them all out, and then I tell them that way. I don't play it by ear. The only thing that wasn't in the original script is the Psycho 78, the biker gang. That was actually a write-in gang. I accidentally in issue 1. So you were supposed to name a gang, and 2 people pledged on it because I didn't put it limited. So I created another gang, and I think that they really helped out the story. So kudos to them. But I added a whole nother gang into the whole story. And Psycho 78 is not a reference to the Crazy 88s. It's actually a reference to a rap song by NoFX.
See, learn something new every day. Learn something new.
Yeah, it's not me. It's not me. That was the guy. Not NoFX. The Misfits. And it wasn't a reference to me. Misfits aren't one of my favorite bands. That was what the guy who paid for that pledge. That's what he wanted. He wanted to tie into them.
See, I don't even know anything about that, and so you learn something new every day. But obviously, you get that feel for. And the reason why I say the Crazy 88s is because obviously Quentin Tarantino has been all over this, and it's got a very Quentin Tarantino feel. It's got very much an early '90s Quentin Tarantino feel. Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Those 2 movies I think are very much embedded into Broke Down, and so I think that's something that's super interesting when it's thrown into there as well. And then there's a bunch of other movies as well that I think also fit really nicely with this. And obviously we're avoiding a bunch of stuff here because once we start spoiling things, it's so much easier to talk about it if we could spoil things. But I'm being good right now for everybody interested in that, because I do want people to actually read it. And I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised with how it goes.
And one of the things I want to say too is, though Andrew's interviewed me a few times, he actually is a fan. He backed it on Comixology. He read it on Comixology before he got the book. So he had an interest before meeting me. Which is kind of cool. Which I think now you've been doing this for a long time. You're kind of catching up, right? Oh, I want to be on the show. All right, cool. Let me see your work. Let me look at it. Let me figure it out. Where you were a fan before you ever interviewed me, which is I think an interesting thing.
Yeah, I was a digital fan too, which is even crazier if you
Right,
think of
right.
that,
And
right?
one I didn't know, like you weren't on my backer list for Kickstarter. You know?
So it's kind of crazy to even talk about this. Is that I was a digital fan first, and it wasn't even that. In which it wasn't that I was anti Kickstarter or anything along those lines. It was legitimately I'm just scrolling through. I'm like, oh, this seems interesting, and the cover looks cool. And hey, let me read this. Let me read this. And then I actually read issue 3 physically. So I
Right,
actually didn't read issue 3 digitally, and obviously I've gotten a copy of issue 4 digitally. And so it's one of those things where it's just like I'm just browsing. I thought it was pretty cool, and so I also think that's something that's also should be acknowledged is that well I was reading indie comics digitally,
right.
so I think that's something that is super interesting, and also just to even go further off of this, obviously this thing ties up nicely. Absurdity is a great word to throw out there, and I think people are gonna be like, oh man, and also it moves really quickly towards the last like 8 pages. I mean, a lot of stuff happens in the last 8 pages.
Right.
So if you like books that sort of give you that position where you get backstory and then everything sort of starts making sense. So this is how I viewed it: is that it's like everything starts making sense of why what happened, and then the resolution happens super quickly, which is a nice touch on it because you're like, okay, now it all makes sense, and now we get to why we're here, and then you don't prolong it, which I think is a nice thing because unfortunately some books, Walking Dead might be an example of that, where that book should have ended maybe sooner rather than later. Or it should have gone on
Well,
for another 100 issues.
anything. I mean, traditional comics, that's the form, right? A Batman arc happens, crazy things happen, and get resolved in the first 5 or 6 pages of that last issue of that arc. And then the rest is resolution setting up what's coming next. Where I didn't do that. You know, the action up till page 28, you're still getting resolutions. And then I end it. I don't, I give you 1 page epilogues and then we walk away, and that was done on purpose. It's not, I hate that in comics. I always feel like I'm cheated where the end of an arc of a story, they're just trying to sell me on what's coming next instead of just giving me, my great ending. Especially on a big crossover like Metal. Metal was all about pushing Future Foundation and Future Infinite Frontier, all this stuff on DC. So it's nice, when you write it into comics. And what's good about it is I'm putting Broke Down away temporarily. It's not that I'm not going to be working on the sequel because I've got a couple things coming, but I'm putting it away for a little bit so I can play with some other toys and before I come back to it. I do have a 3-arc thing. This is Act 1. There's an Act 2. That's another trade's worth of stuff, and then there's an Act 3. But I'm going to take a break from it. And see what's going on and really feel it out, if that's the art style that I want to go with, or do I want to go a little darker? You and I've talked about for a while, you're really excited about the sequel because it has wrestling in it, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. So for those who don't know, there's definitely something that teases that at the end. Obviously, there's going to be something that's going on with wrestling and throwing it in there. I'm a big wrestling fan. For those who don't know, obviously, my interview today with the wrestler did not go well. I'm going to be fixing that. I will publicly state that. That's a whole different discussion. I'm going to be working on that. And I got actually 2 wrestlers more this week, which is going to be super exciting. But I digress right there. Enough about me. Obviously, you do have that thing that sort of sets it up. But I think Kickstarter, in many ways, allows for better stories to be told because you're not beholden to your subscriber lists. I'm right now reading a bunch of stuff on Comixology, and I'm actually reading Court of the Owls. I'm reading the first 3 on my subscription to Comixology. I know I'm paying the $6, guys. I want to read a lot of comics right now. I just got a brand new iPad for my birthday a few months ago, and I love it. It's great. And so obviously, but I see where the end of the first 6 issues sets up for the next 6 issues.
Right, sure.
But with Kickstarter, since you're self-funding, you don't have to be beholden to that. And you can say, hey, I'm just doing 4 issues and I'm done because the book is now funded. And now I'm not dealing with Diamond and I'm not dealing with all of these different, entities. So what is that like for you to say, hey, I now can tell whatever story I want to tell because I don't need diamond. I don't need.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's great. Kind of a spoiler here. Now that we're funded, I'll share this. I've hired four other writers to help with basically an issue's worth of stuff for the trade. Which is not something you would be able to do in like an image or stuff because they would look at that as a waste of money. If I have enough to do an issue, I need to not put that in the trade. I need to put out another issue, right? But because of Kickstarter, I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to make it special. For you who've jumped back and forth digital, all right, maybe you'll want to buy the trade as one thing stuff. And you know what's going to help make you do that? Oh, if he has 20 extra pages, that's going to help make you make that decision a lot easier. And I'm not beholden to anybody, and I can do it the way I would like to do it versus other stuff. I really feel, and maybe because you've read all four, how I didn't want anyone to write. A lot of people have offered to write backup stories and things like that for Broke Down. And I've never allowed anybody because I think you need to know this information that's in the story before you could write any of those characters. Because their motivations need to be very clearly laid out. Because if they're not, you're not going to write the character right, even though you think you understand them. So yeah, that's what I love about Kickstarter, and I love that I'm speaking directly to my fans. I am gonna maybe seek a publisher to put this into Diamond, but again, it's probably gonna be a very different version of it. I'm probably gonna have to cut out some pages to fit to their standards. Because my comics issue 1's 30 pages, issue 2 is 26, issue 3 is 28, and then issue 4 is 40. These are not diamond numbers. So I was allowed to tell the story the way I wanted to tell them. And I think that it flows best. So if it gets published by somebody else, they're probably going to make me turn it into a 6-issue series and kind of remarket it and retool it, which is fine. I don't mind doing that, but it's not the way the story was intended to be told.
Yeah, and I also think that Kickstarter, I think the biggest thing is that you're not beholden to anybody. Also, the fact is that you could write it the way you want. You could put whatever graphics you want into it. You could
Right.
put whatever art style you want into it. And also, you're not going into debt with it.
Right.
When you take it to an image in particular, and obviously you don't want to give up creator-owned rights with it.
Sure.
I'm very protective of my intellectual properties that I put out there, and I'm putting out a big intellectual property, hopefully, and then the goalpost is moving, and it's for a lot of reasons, but I am going to be very protective of it.
Right.
And so that's something that I think is crucial. Where second you bring it to a DC, Marvel, a Zenescope, and as much as I love Zenescope, and before we went live, we were speaking about Zenescope. It's no trade secret that I love Zenescope. They just did something with Emerald City Comics. Shout out to Zenescope, shout out to that company and that comic shop because it's an interesting store. I've never been there, but obviously I've heard interesting things about them and I've heard good things about them, and they seem like decent people. But obviously when you take it to one of those companies, they own the book. Versus
Right.
if you take it to an image, or there's others that are creator owned, but then you either have to be in debt to them or they might take a percentage so they're paid back, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on. And so it does change what you can do with the book. It changes what you can present in the book. It changes the way you can flow the book. And it's super complicated because that changes the way the story is meant to be read. When I'm reading a 30-page issue, there's a reason why that first issue is 30 pages and then the second issue is like 26, right?
Right. Exactly.
Because you might need those extra 4 pages in the first one to get over the hump to say, hey, I'm invested and I want to see what happens in issue 2.
Right. Exactly, and keeping the price tag the same, right? That you're absolutely allowed to do that, but if you go to any of these other companies, they care about that profit margin a heck of a lot more than I do, right? Mine is $5 all across the board. It doesn't matter if you're paying 40 for issue 4 or 30 for issue 1 or 2 and 3. It kind of all evens out because I care about that profit margin. That's me. I'm willing to take that hit, but I can't promise you that Scout or SourcePoint, or Image or any of these companies that would pick up the property would be willing to take that hit. And nor should they. Even like being on their side, should they, take a hit on my property versus another property? So all those things got to be played out. And you do give up regardless of what you do. If I give it to somebody else, it doesn't matter how much creator owned I have. I'm still giving it to them. For instance, if I sell it with Scout, they're going to be pitching it to movie studios without my consent. Like that's kind of their thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. So I've lost temporary rights because the only one who should be pitching it to movies is me. And is what's that worth, right? What does that look like, and how does that all play out?
I think one of the only companies that doesn't do that is Image, because it's been crystal clear that Saga is not coming to become a movie anytime soon, because Brian K. Vaughan said no, and I think Fiona Staples said no as well. And so,
but again, it depends on where you're in an Image. If you're an Image flat, yes, but if you're in Skybound, that's not true. That's not what Kirkman's brand of that does. So it really depends on those things, and that's a lot of technical know-how of the industry that you don't really need to, as a reader and a fan, you don't really need to go with. But all of them have something that you're giving up to do this. So don't pretend it doesn't. Even Comixology, like there's certain things that Comixology can do when I submit my stuff to that platform. Sure, I still own it, but they have the right to sell it at different rates for anybody. They can reduce my rate or up my rate as they so choose by me submitting it to them. There's a whole bunch of things that go into that.
Yeah, and there's a whole increment thing. Obviously, I am on the investment side of this entire equation, so I know a lot of stuff that goes on. I understand a lot of contracts, and obviously that may or may not be my intellectual property that I am working on. But again, that is a little bit far off. And if anybody knows my secret group, that then / page, it's occasionally published on Pop Anime Comics, just saying, be on the lookout for it. You will know exactly what I'm talking about. But obviously there's a bunch of stuff that goes on with that. And obviously I do want to talk a little bit about the epilogue, because it does end with it being open-ended. Obviously wrestling is fun. And let's just say that there's a few more jobs that have to be done. Mr.
Correct. Yeah. There's more stories. Like I said, if I'm going to take a break a little bit, and I may be back to it sooner. So book came. One of the things about comics that's really interesting is I read a lot. So a book came out this week called Nocturna, which is Scott Snyder and Tony Daniels. I literally wrote that plot just slightly different than that was going to be my next book called Yellow. I think we may have even talked about it when I was doing Cthulhu Invades Oz. I'm not going to do that book anymore because Scott Snyder's a better writer than me. So luckily I was only invested. I only had a page of art done, so it's not a huge deal. And maybe I can turn that into something else. But what I want to do with it, but I'm not upset about it. I think that means I'm in the right direction, right? If he's writing something similar to what I'm thinking of, I'm in the right direction trying to do some stuff. So maybe back sooner, but I want to put it away for a little bit, put another series up, that has a full arc, probably a 3-issue this time instead of a 4-issue, and try to get it out faster, like every month, every quarter. So a book every 3 months, get it out in a year, see what that looks like. I'm also writing something for specifically to sell, so to Source Point and Scout. I'm doing a one-shot that's in develop right now. But that's something where I'm going to try to not go to Kickstarter, and go somewhere else first and then be able to do it. So I'm trying a few new things in the market. But yeah, this is putting Broke down to bed, and then I'm going to give it a little bit. But then obviously we'll be working on the trade at some point. But we're going to give it a little bit. I want people to be able to read this, enjoy it. It's not going to be like comic comes out 2 months later. I'm going to be doing for the trade. You're going to wait till a while. I don't even know if it'll be 2021, but
yeah. And let's even talk about that before we get into the rewards, because obviously people with Kickstarter, everybody has a different approach to it. Some people are running Kickstarters every quarter. Some people are doing it every 2 months. And obviously I don't know what the right answer is on this. And I think I'm willing to take a stab at this. If your audience is willing to pay you every 2 months and you could handle that and get out and get something funded every 2 months and then get it out in month 3, or get it out, if you fund it in February, get it out in April, and then they keep on backing it. As soon as you get it out in April, then you get it out. You run another one in April, and
right.
Run like a machine, you get 6 out in a year. I don't think there's anything wrong with that in particular. But also what I find is that a lot of people like doing quarterly or every 6 months, because it does give you time to run it. It gives you time for fulfillment. So what is that like for you in figuring out all of that? Because
so it's tough. So Cthulhu Invades Oz took so much extra time than expected. It took a lot of extra time. In fact, I still don't even have the hardcovers yet. I'm getting them this week, and then I'm shipping them out. There's only like 40 or something. I'm at 82%. Luckily, most of the people who backed hardcovers have backed other stuff from me. So when I send an email, say they're going to get it, they understand they're going to get it, right? It's not a shock. But really, you should fulfill the last thing before you put a new thing. That's the rule of thumb. But if I didn't launch, Broke Down before the end of Cthulhu, I would be pushing it till April.
Oh no. And we froze. And we're frozen. And we're frozen.
All right, sorry. I know you've been having one of these days, right? I'm back.
Oh my God, it's not my day. So you cut off right where you were saying, where you basically, if you didn't launch it when Cthulhu was going on, or you were fulfilling Cthulhu, you would be pushed back further.
Yeah. Because I have 3 books that are complete. In basically the form. So Andrew, as he said, some pages are colored, some are not, but that's mostly complete. That will be complete by the end of the Kickstarter. So within the next 3 weeks. Colors don't take that long. They give me about a page or 2 a day. So it doesn't take that long to do colors versus the actual line art. And then I got to get my wife to edit. There's a lot of editing. There's a lot of, there's some grammar stuff, and you want to make things clear. This is a big ending. There's a lot of stuff going on. I want to make sure it's clear, and that's why, I send it out to reviewers beforehand. Hi, Nick, by the way, I see you. But yeah, Voodoo Nations is in the same position. I can send you Voodoo Nations too right now, so you can read it. There's a book called Expired that I have that is about the same point. That has about 4 pages left to be completed, but that'll be done before the end of the month. So that's where I'm at right now, because I've grown so much in my career, and Cthulhu was such a big undertaking. It took 4 months of edit. It took like 2.5 months of editing, because we had 5 editors. We had to make sure it was perfect and make sure everything was good. So it's a crazy monster, and as people know, I'm working on Cthulhu Invades Wonderland right now. So I've got a lot of stuff building up, and that's without being in any of the independent, books. That's just me doing stuff, on my own, trying to make it on Kickstarter. So
and the reason why I asked this is because obviously you got a lot of stuff going on, and look, fulfillment sometimes takes longer than it doesn't, but people have track records that are good, and I think that to some degree, if you are if you started doing something in January, your objection is to get it out in March, and then you start launching your Kickstarter for your second thing or a different project in February, and that it's clear that it's just a fulfillment issue. I think it's a little bit different, and especially in that realm where if you sort of have a track record of being able to handle it, or if things sort of lead a little bit into each other, I think it's okay. I think when it doesn't become okay is when something's taking an extra 15 months, unless it's explicitly known that it's going to take an extra 15 months. Where there's been projects that people have been well aware that saying, hey, this is going to take a year to finish, and I want you to know that this is taking a year to finish, but they've also been very good at communicating. And there's been projects that still haven't been funded for 5 years and haven't been fulfilled. So obviously it is very, very complicated in that regard as far as that goes.
Exactly. And I take it very seriously. Like, I was supposed to launch March 1st. That was my goal, was to launch March 1st. I didn't launch until March 5th. And the reason for that is I wanted to take an extra, I want to take that a week to make sure that people got their books. And as you saw, like, a lot of people have been posting their Cthulhu Invades Oz that they've got them in the mail. Because I want people to know, hey, your book is coming. If you don't have it, the post office is messed up right now. Things are taking forever when you ship them. That's not my stuff. And we're at 82% fulfilled. And really, we're actually closer to like 90-ish, because a lot of those are creator copies who I'm giving to when they do a signing on Friday night here in Melbourne. So we're really higher than that. It's really only the hardcovers that need to be shipped out, which sucks, because that's just what it is. But And I was supposed to get those hardcovers today, and things got messed up. The printer that I got had COVID, so they shipped it somewhere else. So I didn't get infected, so I could go pick it up somewhere else. So it's been crazy. It's been a crazy wild ride, but I'm excited to get it out. I'm excited to get it to people. And you're right. I can get away with it versus other people because of track record. And that's it. It's just it. When you have 8 books that are fulfilled, the 9th one being a little slow, but you do see on your Facebook feed that people are getting it, you feel okay about it.
Yeah, and I also think that it also depends on the creator. So Jamie
Yeah.
Tyndall is an example of that, where Jamie Tyndall can be backed up a little bit, and nobody's ever going to get angry because Jamie Tyndall is so well known in the industry, and Jamie Tyndall is somebody who runs really, really expensive Kickstarters and does really well and can be slightly backed up, but everybody knows they're going to get what they want, even if it's a month late. And then nobody's ever whining and complaining because there's communication, and then there's a variety of other things that are thrown out there with it. And then
Right.
also the rewards and the stretch goals. I don't know if you saw Miss Meow's stretch goals, but that was pretty intense what he did. And it might not have cost a lot of money, but it still was massive, throwing print in there and magnets and buttons and pins and,
Yeah.
all sorts of cool stuff. And also any variant you got the regular edition, super cool with that realm. And so obviously, I think there's something to be said about that stuff. But I do want to talk about the rewards because there's a bunch of stuff coming out, and so I want to drop cover A here. I think this is cover A. So
Yeah.
obviously,
That's all right.
so obviously, there's the digital stuff that you can get. You get this digitally. I think you get cover B digitally, or cover A and cover B might be digital. As far as
Well,
that.
yeah, in the back we'll have a cover gallery, so you'll be able to see them all. But yeah, that cover A will be the digital cover.
And then you could get everything one through 4 digitally, which is cool.
Yeah, for
And,
$11, it's nothing. It's $11 to get all 4 digitally.
and then obviously you could get it physical too.
Yeah, and that's for all 4. It's $35, which is again really well worth it. And that comes with a premium. Do you have a copy of the issue 1 covers, Prestige?
I don't know if I have a copy of the Prestige stuff in there, but I do have the cover B right here.
Okay.
So that's
And that's a great cover. That's done by the guy who does Grit, over at Source Point. It's a beautiful cover. Love that cover.
And so obviously I don't think I have a Prestige in here. I didn't even think about putting one in, so that's my bad, everybody. But obviously, let's talk about that too, because I don't know exactly what a Prestige cover is. Is there an issue 1 Prestige, and then there's some other?
Yeah. So we're reprinting issue 1. The reason why we're doing it is issue 1 was floppy. It was like a Marvel or DC book where it's really, really floppy, not really hard cardstock. So I've gone ahead and reprinted them. But not only have I done that, I'm also adding spot UV. So there's some bullet holes on the cover that you'll be able to touch, and the logo you'll be able to touch and feel. So all of that will be added to that cover. I'm also doing that as the first stretch goal. I haven't posted it yet, but that's the first stretch goal for issue 4, is adding that special UV treatment to issue 4, the main cover, because everybody will get that. So that's really, really cool of doing that. But yeah, we have 2 different options for the Prestige for issue 1. And that's really just so if you are a collector and you want, to keep these in good shape, maybe you want to try to get a 9.9, you want to ship them out, this allows that opportunity a lot easier, because it's really hard, as many people know, to get a more modern Marvel or DC book off the shelf and get a 9.9. Just very hard, just because of the quality of the paper. I was in the same boat with Brokedown, so this helps allow them to do that.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, yesterday Jay Scott Camp, I know it's a bit off topic. He had a bunch of 9.9s up for sale on his website, and I could tell you that they were fetching good money.
Right.
He had also a bunch of 9.8s that were like 30, 40% off. May or may not have bought some. I will not disclose. I am sure that my mom's going to yell at me, and she'll see them, and they'll look really cool. And when they're worth, $200 a piece, there'll be a different discussion. She'll sing a different tune. But anyhow, right. I digress right there. But getting a 9.9 directly is very hard in the comic world, and this is my area of expertise. I have not gotten one ever, and there's an opportunity for me to buy one. on a book that wasn't necessarily popular, but for $40, and I should have bought it because it is a thing that doesn't come up all the time. And so super hard. And just to give an example here, a Killing Joke in a 9.8 fetches maybe $500 to $700. In a 9.9, you're looking at 1,800.
Right.
Conservatively, if not, and that's on the low end, and that's where it's sort of sitting right now. And on the high end, it could be like 2,200. So there's a big difference in a 0.1 of a grade. Also, 9.9s are in gold, which is super cool. So that's another thing. So obviously, I think that does help tremendously in that regard as well.
Yeah, I got one, and what inspired this was when I got a 9.9 back for Voodoo Nations. I got a 9.9 back. And I realized that there's no way that anybody could ship out a broke down and get a 9.9 just because of the quality of the paper, because I'd have to ship it to them regardless of how much I protect it. Even with me printing up, it was already shipped to me it was shipped from China to here, and then it was shipped from somewhere here to my house. So it had tons of opportunities to get messed up. So I want the fans of my work who are collectors to be able to get that 9.9. And the only way I can do that is by putting out another edition that has a better chance of doing that. And that's my goal.
And even going beyond that, I do think it's kind of cool to also get that feely, touchy stuff to it. I think Tyler James has done a bunch of cool stuff with covers. And obviously, people say, oh, comics are dead and physical copies are dead. And I think this makes it also competitive in many ways, where when you have a cool cover and an actual feeling cover or an englossed cover, or like Metal has done this, where it's like you can feel it and like it feels a little bit like bumped up. I think that's super important because it makes it now, oh, I can feel this, because you can't feel that digitally. And so I think that makes print competitive in many ways. And for those who say, hey, look, I want an experience and I want to feel something and I want that shiny thing. I'm not interested in getting it graded per se, but I want to feel it. I also want a nicer copy that's going to last longer too. Because everything will deteriorate. It's just a matter of when versus, if it will right now. And so I think that's the other thing too, is that it makes it competitive. It makes it more durable. Also, people like looking at cool art and also feeling and having the experience. So I think that's something that's crucial too. And it's another thing to just say, hey, I'm a fan of this, and now I can get something cool out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done some really cool stuff. They're both new covers. One of them is the car pushing down the road, but it's a different. If you grab the original, you can tell the difference between the two. And then the other one's a Frank Uzan, who a lot of people don't know. The guy only does a few independent covers. He doesn't do them very often. The last one he did with CSROs. He does a lot of it for Comics Tribe, and he's done a few others. He did a broke down one for me way back in the day. So I got him back to do a really cool cover. That's colored. It's an awesome cover for those who love the story. So it's kind of my giving back, but also giving you something new to look at and invest in. Which I think is a good thing.
And even to talk further about this, so obviously there's a bunch of different packages. Obviously everything printed. You could just get issue 4 printed if you have everything else, and you're just saying, hey, I just want a complete set. You get everything digitally. You can get everything. I think also that printed from Broke Down as well. And then there's a bunch of other stuff that you can get too. And I'm sure you're gonna correct me more than I know, but I think you get a bunch of stuff from, I think there's like a deluxe edition from Greg Harm, and he's done a bunch of stuff, and I know that.
So Greg Harm's done he did a artist edition. So what an artist edition is for me is it's a sketch cover. There's only 200 printed. We print them in stocks of 200. It's all pencils and ink. It's a black and white cover, but it's done on sketch copy, so he can do an extra sketch on it. In the past, we've had Walter Ossie from Metal Shark Bro. We had Jim O'Reilly, who's done a whole bunch of stuff. And Frank Uzan, the guy who I just mentioned, has done stuff. So we're very blessed on being able to do that. That's a trend that we've done with the Broke Down. It's kind of my special cover that I like to do. So you can get that. We also have a $100 tier, which Sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not, because you get everything that I've done, but you're going to get $200 worth of value from that. Meaning, I'm not just going to give you the basic covers of everything. I'm going to give you advanced covers to make it a $200 value. And you'll get Cthulhu Invades Oz, you'll get Parallels 1 and 2, you get Voodoo Nations, and all 4 broke down and various stuff. And we've had 3 backers on it already, so it's not something to slouch on. It's a lot of comics for good value.
Yeah, and then there's some other stuff too. I think is there a digital orange cone package?
Yeah, there's a digital. Yeah, if you just want to read all the digital, you can absolutely do that. You know, we have retail packages that are in there. We even have the original art for the cover for the grit cover, the second cover that you showed. We also are going to be adding the Greg Harms cover up now that we're funded. So that cover, we have that, the original art for it. It's only $350 too, just so you know. And if you're an art guy, $350 is very reasonable for a cover. Cover should be $500 to $600, even for indie guys.
And so obviously there's a bunch of different stuff that people can pick up and figure out. And then obviously, you know, if you want to read Cthulhu Invades Oz, and we spoke about that extensively and what's going on with that in that anthology. And obviously if you're a Wizard of Oz fan, if you're a Cthulhu fan, it's a really cool mashup. And there's a lot of cool people that worked on that project, and a lot of people on the indie side, and a lot of people there's a few people who are more mainstream that worked on that as well. You know, that lion story is a really good selling point for those who don't know. And you know who was on my show last week, Ben Dunn, who gave, you know, Dan Mendoza, you know, his first sort of opportunity in comics. So super cool tying it all together. I don't think I said anything wrong, did I?
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm making sure I'm on base here, because I'm looking at your face and you're like, you give me that.
Well, I just realized that I forgot to add Cthulhu Invades Oz to the add-on menu, so I'm going to do that right now. So that's what I'm doing behind the scenes here. I'm adding it to it because, you know, I want to be able to get it to you. If you can't get it, you can back it in this campaign and get it if you for some reason missed this amazing book. You know, a lot of these people are up-and-comers. I will tell you, because you guys don't know, but the second quarter, you're going to regret not buying this, because I know what a lot of these people have signed deals and what books they have coming out for big companies, and you're going to want to get their early work, and it's going to be hard to get because I'm not reprinting this book. It was too expensive. I'm going to be honest. I'm not reprinting it. So, you know, I have 2,000 copies. There's 2,000 copies of this in the world. If you don't get one, not my problem. And we sold a lot of the Kickstarter.
So let me ask you a question, because I'm going to press you. Is digital going to be taken off, or is it just physical?
Oh, you'll always be able to get digital, but physical.
I want to make sure, because right now in the world things are crazy, and also digital is cheaper, and so I want to make sure, and then I don't want to alarm anybody that, hey, look, you know, I can't afford it, but I can afford a digital copy and I want to read it. You know, not to create. You know, obviously, if you want this book and you want a physical copy, obviously you're gonna want to buy it now. And then also there's a bunch of cool stuff going on with it as well. And obviously Cthulhu Invades Wonderland is going to be super cool as well with that. And so obviously, you know, even though Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, which you'll be back on to talk about that when that starts coming out. And
we'll bring a crew.
What'd you say?
We'll bring a crew. We ain't coming by ourselves. We'll come the whole crew.
Maybe I should submit to that. You know, if I had time, when you invade a third one, I'll submit a 2-pager. Just hold me to it.
I would hire you just because of your artist. Every time you ever bring up an artist and I don't know their name, I regret not knowing that name.
How many artists do I bring up that you don't know? Now I'm curious.
It's a lot of the Zenescope people, because like I said, I don't participate in the Zenescope stuff. So a lot of times you're like, you need to look at this guy, and I'm like, oh, okay. Because when I think of Zenescope, I think very clean, very fantasy. That's just what I think, because that's what their covers look like. But that's not always what the interiors look like. And some of the interior artists, I would sign in a minute because they're so good. Especially when you're doing
a bunch of cover artists that are so good too.
Yeah.
There's tier A Zenoscope, and they're going to hate me when I say this. There's tier A, which is the super exclusives, and you got your E-Basses, you got your Chazuses, you got your Sunkumanakis, you got your Niarafinos in there, you got your Metcalfs to some degree, but Metcalf is sort of a tier B guy to some degree. And the reason why I say it this way, and it's not an issue of who's good, who's bad. Keith Garvey is like a tier A guy. I mean, those are like the exclusive and the top exclusive guys. The tier B guys are all the covers A's, B's, C's, and D's that are not, exclusive, that come out every single week that they give you. So like a Kanan White, for instance, a Metcalf, Ivor Vigorino is a good one. Anthony Spay, you can make the argument on that, but he's sort of also tier, but then you have like a David Simon and Simon, and then he does very few covers with them now, or you got a David Nakayama for instance, who's like a tier A guy. So it's super common. Then you have people who do weird exclusives for them that are not, that do maybe like 3 or 4 a year, and you're like, oh snap, this is amazing. And they got a whole ballpen of people who are now coming up, and they're like tier D, that they're just starting to get stuff. And so it's super, super interesting. And what you start finding out is that it's like, oh, this is crazy. So super interesting. And then their interiors are amazing, and people do some awesome stuff. And it's just fascinating what they do. Yeah. And so looking at certain people, super interesting what they do. And Zenoscope is such a good bullpen, because legitimately there are so many people who have worked for Zenoscope that nobody knows, and then they get onto a DC or Marvel book, and it's like, oh, these people can draw.
Sure. And you can tell too. Here's how you know whether or not you have a good Zenoscope artist. Go ahead and buy The Last Ronin. Look at the cover gallery. Look up their name in Zenoscope and how much our covers are going for Last Ronin and Zenoscope, and you realize you may not know that name, but other people do, and they're paying a lot for it.
I made so much money off of Zenoscope, and I said it to Ralph. So I don't know if I told this story the last time, but Ralph Tedesco has been on my show, and he is one of the co-founders of Zenoscope. And I openly said, with Ralph, I buy and sell your books. And they're like, yeah, we know. We know exactly who you are. We know what you're doing, and we're cool with it. They're one of the companies that say, guys, sell our books. Yeah. We want to sell you books so that you, in 3 years from now, sell it for 6 times the amount of money. They got no problem with that. And I was on a show in one of their virtual cons talking about this exact topic, which I have something to say about that, but we're going to table that for 1 second. Right. So obviously, I want people to go check out Cthulhu Invades Oz. I personally, and I'm sure you might have a different opinion on me, I don't care if you read it digitally or you buy the physical copy. Doesn't matter to me.
No, it really doesn't matter to me. I think it's a beautiful book. I think it's actually still available on Indiegogo if you just want Cthulhu Invades Oz. It's available on Indiegogo. You can still get it. I'm going to keep it up there until the last book is shipped. So when I ship the last Cthulhu Invades Oz, that's when I'll take it off and I'll put it on my own website. But it's on Indiegogo as an in-demand. So meaning you just order it, and I ship it out like within 1 or 2 weeks because I've got most of the copies. So
maybe I'll pick a second copy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give it to my mom as a gift, even though she's not a Cthulhu fan.
People have. And just like you, I feel the same way about flipping. There's somebody who bought. He's like, hey, you're not going to get mad if I buy a second signed copy by the creators to flip. I was like, hell no. I'm excited that you're wanting to flip my book.
Oh, I'm not going to flip it. I'm going to give it as a gift.
Somebody called me though. Someone actually asked me, hey, I'm going to back it over there, a second signed copy, because you could only get 1 on the Kickstarter. I mean, you could technically order 2. You'd have to ask. Kickstarter's just not designed for quantity 2. It doesn't have that option. So you'd have to ask me and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so he ordered it over there, and he's getting a second time. And he plans on flipping it, like 100%. He's like, I want to make back my money for the first one to flip it.
So obviously, I'm very excited. I'm waiting for my copy and my signed copy, so that should be fun. Yeah. And hopefully we'll get here sooner. But obviously, the post office is messed up. For those who don't know, it is a messed up situation, and COVID doesn't help. And there's a lot of reasons why. But I don't want to bash on the post office too much, because they do a decent job with a lot of stuff, and I use them quite frequently in my business. So I know the post office, and it works for me still, and I have no problem waiting a few weeks for my book to arrive. My
Oh,
signed copy. Hopefully, by the way, who signed it? I want to know that.
well, you're gonna get you got the hardcover, so yours hasn't been signed yet. So it's whoever shows up on Friday. But currently, we have Jonathan Hendricks, we got David Galliano, we got David Byrne, the co-publisher of Scout. We've got myself, my wife. We've got two of the writers and editors that are there. We've got Luke Stone coming down. I mean, you've got, I think it's like 12 signatures. So I think we got about 12 people coming down to sign it. Basically, any of the talent in Florida is going to be coming down to sign your book. So I mean, you're going to get it pretty well. You're going to get pretty signed. And we only promised you 5, but I'm going all out. And that's not counting. Oh, Kyle Willis, the guy who did your cover, the cover to that, he's coming down. He's signing it as well. So lots of really cool people. So I think
I don't even know what copy I got. This is news to me. I just got something. I'm like, oh, cool. This is going to be fun.
yeah, you got a hardcover.
Okay, that's news to me. I was like, okay, cool. I'll get it signed. What do I care? I got the money to do it, sure. And so that's my entire position on that. So again, ignorance is bliss. I just wanted a copy because I enjoyed reading it in the digital format and the advanced copy you sent me. And obviously, so I was like, oh, this is a cool book. I didn't really know who was in it per se, and then it was going to become big or whatnot. But it's cool on that. And then I'm going to ask another question because this is relevant and might make people angry here, but obviously, is there excess hardcovers that you printed, or were those exclusively made for Kickstarter and Kickstarter exclusive? So that's
there's a few, but not many, because the artist who drew that cover, that's his payment, is he wanted some hardcovers. So I reserved a few for the Indiegogo. I think there's like 10 or 12 over at the Indiegogo that people can get, but that's it. But what is exclusive is anybody who got the soft cover and got the glow in the dark, that's gone. That's only for the Kickstarter people. So I got 10 extra for that, and that 10 extra is literally just in case someone says, hey, my book came back damaged. Because when you're sending out, I think it's 502 books I'm sending out, we're going to get damages. And 1 out of every 100 or so is going to be damaged. That's just the mail. It's just reality. You factor it in,
And so you're going to be selling those damaged books, hopefully, or if you even ask for a return.
No. Normally, what I do with the damaged book is I have them bring them to the comic store and drop it off there. See if they're interested. See if I can turn it into a sale. It's happened a couple of times.
Well, I'm excited. So obviously that I wanted to throw that out there so people fully understand that this is something that is exclusive. So when it goes up and you see it, and that if you're interested and you're like, oh man, there's going to be 10 to 12 people signing this hardcover book, and that buy it now and you got to pay for it because it might not be there tomorrow.
Well, and I'll be honest, there's publishers who are already knocking on my door for the book. I'm not even entertaining ideas until everybody gets their book, because I just feel that that's disrespectful. But yeah, there's stuff, and when it comes out with another logo on it, it's not going to be the same book, because some of those are farming names. They're not about necessarily the book. There's certain things I'll fight for, but there's certain stories in there that we kind of just threw in, that we may remove to get a lower print count, because 166, again, going back to what we talked about before, 166 is a little bit out of the price range. So they're going to probably want to cut about 16 pages from the book. And what that looks like and whose stories gets cut, we'll have to see. That's just reality when you're selling trades, because that puts it at the $25 mark, and for a consumer market, that's a little high.
And also, one of the other things as well is that people who are book collectors, and I'm not in necessarily the graphic novel market, and so I'm not speaking necessarily from that position, but obviously, I would imagine that the Kickstarter, which is the original, the first, is, if we do look at a book market, a second-hand book market, is going to fetch a better price if this goes in that direction. And I'm not making any guarantees, but typically the true first edition, we could call it, will fetch more money. And if you look at Harry Potter, that's a great example.
Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to put it on Amazon right now, and you're going to get a lower quality paper. You're going to get a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to alter the cover a little bit to make sure that you got the Amazon edition. Because Amazon doesn't print as nice as my quality. You have high quality paper stock. I mean, I don't have one in this room with me, or I'd show you, but it's beautiful quality. It's spared, but I mean, my cost was close to $10 to $12 a book. I mean, it's wasn't cheap to make, and that's not because I didn't go to an affordable printer. It's because I was like, yes, add that extra coating. Yes, add that extra quality for print. Because again, that's what you can do with Kickstarter. You can allow yourself to make up for quality. You can make it the best you can. You know.
And so obviously I'm very excited for it. I've read it. I might go buy a soft cover to give as a gift because
Yeah.
I think it'll be a cool gift. I also think that this is a relatively non-violent comic book. All things considered.
Yeah, it's a little violent, but most of the violence are off panel. There's a couple little things. It's not like crazy bloody, like some of the books can be, so it's not any of that. But yeah, you can still get it on the Indiegogo, on the in demand. Like I said, it ships out directly, and there's a different cover there because all the other ones are glow in the dark.
Oh snap! What just happened? What just happened? Whoa, what just happened? This is not good. I don't know where Travis went. Let's see where Travis went. What just happened? Okay, this is really weird. I don't know what just happened. I'm like ultra confused.
Sorry about that.
Oh my God, please. I
Right?
had enough problems. You almost just gave me a heart attack. Not okay.
Yeah, no, my son has my phone in the other room, and apparently you can't be on two streams, and he tried to get in this stream on accident by clicking, and it booted me out.
Woo. Oh my God.
What a day, huh?
This is the exact problem happened earlier today. And her phone died. I'm like, oh my God, what just happened? Oh my God. And one of the comments that just happened that I think says it all. Just if we could edit this one, and I think it says it all right there. So clearly,
Lights and it glows, Trisha Smiley. Yeah. Going back to the glow in the dark exclusive to Kickstarter, and then if you order it on the Indiegogo, you get it without the glow. Which I've had people go, I really like the glow, but I really like that art because you lose the art when you go to glow. It's just the fact when you go to glow in the dark, you kind of lose the art a little bit. So they bought that cover over on Indiegogo because they wanted that cover. They wanted the non-glow.
Yeah, no, I think it's super interesting. And I also know that glow was like right up to the wire of meeting that stretch goal.
Yeah, we actually didn't meet it. I decided to do it anyways. We were very, very close, but we didn't meet it. But I decided, people work so hard, I'll take a little bit, You think of what a lot of people don't realize is they think that, oh, Travis made $25,000 on a Kickstarter. No, man, when you factor in paying all 166 pages of art to people and, getting it printed, getting it shipped, there's not a lot of money, guys.
On an anthology, there's not a lot of money on that.
Yeah. If it was an original, like if it was broke down, that was that same thing, it'd be a different story, and I made that kind of money. But on an anthology,
I want to make that clear because I think there is a distinction. I don't want people to think that anthologies are different beasts than an original thing, and especially if you're the writer and you're not taking a salary, and then you're sort of getting paid as the intellectual property versus a salary writer.
Exactly.
Discussion on Voodoo for those who don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But my battery is dying, so I want to warn you. So probably should wrap it up because I didn't bring my charger in here.
So obviously there's a lot of stuff going on, and so obviously we briefly. I do want to get your take on Kickstarter because obviously you mentioned Nocturnal. We can do it really quickly. Obviously it's a double-edged sword in my opinion, and obviously I want to keep that short. But what do you view about big names coming in, because it is tricky where things are going with that?
I think people are crazy with it's a good thing. Because everyone that they bring to the platform has a better chance of me being able to sell them because they're on the platform and I get to sell to that same audience. Because I don't get to sell to that audience if I'm on Kickstarter, right? And it's a different market versus on the comic rack, right? On the comic rack, I am at the bottom of the row. You got Marvel, you got DC, you got Image, you've got the next biggest store, whatever theirs is. So it's either Scout or Zenoscope or whatever that store's favorites are. And then me, self-publish all the way down to the bottom. On Kickstarter, I am just as important as them. They don't rank any higher than they rank me on the stuff. It's just they get more hits than I do. But every time someone buys that, they recommend 3 books, and my book can be on that list. So I think it's great. It doesn't bother me at all. I get that some people are using it for money grabs, but I also think the people who have comped so far have really understood the market. Like when you look at Scott Snyder, when he did it, he was like, this is a very collector's special edition. I want you to get this. When you get to Berserk, they're like, the people who are going to get it on Kickstarter aren't comic people. So we're only giving them the trade. The individual issues are still going to the comic store first. So I think as long as they keep coming over with an understanding of making it different and unique, we don't have a problem. When they start doing what I'm doing, where I broke down a monthly series as a Kickstarter series, that's when it's going to start getting a little crazy.
And so that's a good way to put it, where it is definitely aimed at collectors. And I think those people are super smart. I also think like Curse Words that I just backed, it's the whole thing in a nice hardcover book too, and it's cheaper to get it. So I think that's also super good in that realm. And I'm super happy with the Curse Words book because it's cheaper for me to get it on Kickstarter than to buy it in the store. And it will eventually go into a store. It's just the nature of the business. But it will be like $100 versus $75. And 25 bucks might sound not like a lot of money, but it's 25%. So obviously for me, it's cool because then I can go back a different project. And now I briefly want to talk about COVID because obviously we're starting to turn a corner, but we're sort of also not. It's complicated. Vaccinations are not, they're being rolled out very slowly and all that stuff. Obviously this is the Kickstarter, everybody to back it. So where do you feel things are going with COVID? Because San Diego Comic-Con was just canceled to some degree, sort of.
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on the state. I think with Florida being as open, we're having WrestleMania down here. We just have the Super Bowl down here. I think MegaCon is going to be a thing. I think MegaCon will be back open. I do think they'll do a lesser capacity. I think they will cap it off for stuff. So I think cons are going to be back, but I don't think until 2022 we'll see it back to normal. But to be honest, I'm happy with no cons. I'm liking these interviews. I'm liking these interviews. These are far more enjoyable to me than me sitting in a panel with 5 people and some dude coming up. And I'm not trying to mock that dude if you're this guy, trying to tell me your opus of your comic story in front of another 500 people, and me trying to tell you in 5 minutes how to do Kickstarter, get an artist, get a writer, get all the things.
Once, Travis. I only asked you once.
Right.
Come on, we have to stop telling this story.
They're not fun. They're not fun for me. I'd rather have people who read the books and want to have an interactual discussion.
I'm not gonna lie. And I used to do panels, and I did 50 anime and comic panels. And honestly, it was miserable, and I wasn't making any money. I was losing money because cons don't pay. And while I got a free ticket, it was miserable for me. And honestly, I love sharing my ideas and everything, but it's not for me. And I don't know if I'm ever going to go back. I don't. And honestly, I like doing this too. I love doing this as well.
I'll go back for the networking part of it to meet other writers and creators. So I'll probably have tables at them, but know that my sales at the table is not my priority. That's not my priority anymore.
For me,
and panels, I'm probably not going to do panels anymore. I don't enjoy them much like you.
For me, I can get everything I want from a con now online because all I want at a con is Zenoscope, and they sell to me online. And if I directly message them, they'll probably sell to me directly anyway, which is
Right.
crazy. So, super, super interesting for me because I found my curation problem. And for me
Right.
to make money, I can now do it cheaper because of COVID. And
Yeah.
my brand has expanded by tenfold, which is insane
Nice.
because of COVID. And so I don't want to go back. And speaking of cons, and I don't know if you've seen the schedule for what is it, Crom Con?
CromCon. Yeah. I'm on the next one. I think you're on it too, right? In March.
Yeah. So I'm at 3 and you're at 3:30.
Nice. Well, you're welcome to stick on for mine. So just hang on over at 3:30. So just.
So I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm talking about comic book investing, and in particular, I'm going to mention certain things about the indie scene, and in particular with art and things like that, and finding certain people and things of that nature, because that's sort of what I'm going to be talking about. And I don't know what you're going to be talking about.
Probably Voodoo Nations. I'll probably have the launch date of Voodoo Nations, so I'll be prepared for Voodoo Nations too.
So it's going to be fun, and it's obviously going to be a very cool thing. I'm super excited to be part of that because that's, I guess, my first virtual con, if it will be. I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to work, and I'm sure I'm going to figure it out really quickly, but it's pretty nonchalant from my understanding. I don't think
It's pretty casual, and a half hour goes by fast.
So on that note, I'm going to let you self-promote because obviously, where can people find it? We got the Kickstarter up thanks to Mike James.
Yeah. Like I said, my battery is at the 14-minute mark, which is not really 14 minutes, as everyone knows. Travis Gibb. Search Broke Down and Four Dead Bodies on the Kickstarter, or go to brokedowncomics.com. You can find me there. That's my main focus. If you want Cthulhu Invades Oz, like we talked about, go ahead and go to Indiegogo. You can pick up that, or you can back it on the Kickstarter. Just added it to an add-on, so you can back this Kickstarter and get Cthulhu Invades Oz, so that's not a problem. Other ways to find me is voodoonations.com. If you want to hear a little bit more about that, that'll kind of tell you what's going on. Luke Stone, you can look at his interview. He just promoted it a couple weeks ago. Go ahead and find his interview. He'll tell you a little bit more about that book. But yeah, we're rocking and rolling, and I'll be back and promoting those things as they come up.
And then also, is that signing? Is it this Friday? Is that public?
No, it's a private signing.
Okay, just want to make sure in case anybody is.
It's a private signing. We're just bringing the people in because there's a lot of books to sign, and signing them and selling them and doing all that would just add too much confusing. So that's a private. However, there is one on March 20th with me and David Bryan from Copal Scout at the same location at Kingdom Comics.
So obviously March 20th, if you would like a bunch of stuff signed, then there you go. And I'm sure it's not just going to be Cthulhu Invades Oz. I'm sure there's going to be some other.
Yeah, we'll sell Broke Down and Voodoo Nations and all that stuff. And he'll be selling steak in some of the rare copies of steak that he has left over from the Kickstarter. So if you're
so obviously March 20th is your next day. If you're in Florida, I'm sure Travis will be promoting that more. And I've been saying it with everybody out there, and Travis has heard me say it probably a bajillion times at this point. Over 100, I've been saying it to everybody. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of my stuff that I'm saying, and you know what I'm going to say. You have to support indie. It is super crucial. Typically, you should be backing Kickstarters or backing either digitally or through people's stores, buying merch, all that stuff, and that's something that is super important and needs to be done. But also, if money's tight right now, what you should be doing is taking care of your family. Make sure your mortgage, your rent's paid, electricity, your internet's still on, water, food, shelter. Your kids are okay. You got your wife, your husband, your partner. They're all okay as well. Make sure your dog's fed and all that stuff. Yeah. Also, make sure you have money for the next month as well. And if that's the case, one of the things that you should be doing is signing up for email lists. Because that is super important. And then secondly, you should be following people on social media. So I know Travis has a bunch of social media, and you should be following on social media because that is also important for two reasons. A, algorithms are super important. And then B, or two, because numbers are infinite according to the Avengers and A versus X, the alphabet is limited. There's only 26 options. You should be following because you'll be informed on every project that's coming out so that when you do have money and things are more stabilized, or you get your $1,400 stimulus check, you could then go back certain projects. So please consider that, but make sure you are financially okay first and foremost. And I think everybody agrees that that's sort of the thing. So on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Yeah, again, Travis Gibb, find me at Jester Lou or back to Kickstarter, where we've got funded, but I want this to be the biggest ever. We got 12 days to go. It's a short campaign. I only do 15-day campaigns. So we're at $3,187, but we want you to get it. Come on, back this book. Try it out.